20 doctors circled the billionaire's bed, whispering, shaking their heads, and slowly surrendering hope. Machines hummed, lights glared, and silence grew heavy. But in a corner of the room, unnoticed by all, a housekeeper, quiet, steady, invisible, saw what the most brilliant minds had missed. And what she discovered would turn despair into a miracle. The room reeked of antiseptic, sharp and bitter, mingling with the sterile hum of machines. 20 doctors in immaculate white coats surrounded the bed, their faces carved with worry. A billionaire who had built empires with his mind now lay helpless, eyes sunken, skin pale as parchment. Every attempt to save him had collapsed into failure. Every voice carried the weight of surrender. The scene felt like the death of certainty, a quiet declaration that wealth and power could not command life itself. In the corner, almost invisible, stood the housekeeper. Her uniform was crisp, though worn at the edges. She clutched her hands together, her knuckles pale, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of sorrow and something else. A sharpness in her gaze no one else carried. She was the only one in the room who did not bow to despair. The billionaire's breast rattled, shallow, uneven. Machines beeped a cruel rhythm, counting the moments left. One of the doctors whispered, "We've done all we can." The words fell heavy, final. The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. She had lived in silence for years, seen the arrogance of those who believed titles and wealth were shields against mortality. But she had also seen truths others ignored, details hidden in plain sight. Her silence had been her strength, and now it was her weapon. Her backstory was written not in books or medals, but in scars and memory. Years before, she had been a caregiver for her own mother, who had withered in a small apartment where doctors rarely came and hospitals were too far. She learned to listen to the body's whispers, the twitch of a hand, the tremble of breath, the smallest change in skin. She had cleaned wounds, crushed herbs, and prayed in silence while machines were a distant dream. She carried the scent of disinfectant in her hair and the sound of her mother's cough etched forever into her soul. When her mother passed, the housekeeper found work in the mansion of the billionaire. She scrubbed floors that gleamed like mirrors, polished silver that caught the sun like fire, and tended rooms that smelled of leather and cedar. The world never saw her, but she saw everything. Wealth blinded its owners, but she lived in the clarity of humility. Now, as 20 doctors prepared to step back, she noticed the billionaire's lips, not the color of fading life, but tinged with something strange. His hand twitched, not with weakness, but with a pattern she had seen before. Memory struck her like lightning, her mother gasping, doctors missing what she alone had recognized. Her chest tightened. The billionaire wasn't dying from what they thought. Something simpler, something hidden beneath layers of assumptions, was strangling him. She wanted to speak, but who would listen? She was the housekeeper, the invisible shadow in a palace of brilliance. The tension rose like a storm pressing against glass. Doctors muttered, nurses scribbled, and silence draped over the room like a funeral shroud. The housekeeper felt her heart pound against her ribs. She stepped forward once, then froze. What if she was wrong? What if her voice shattered the fragile silence only to be dismissed? Yet another thought pierced her fear. What if she was right and silence killed him? Her breath caught. Quietly she cleared her throat. No one turned. She tried again, her voice trembling yet steady. "Excuse me." The words seemed to vanish into the sterile air. A few eyes flicked toward her, annoyed, dismissive. A billionaire's life hung in the balance, and who was she to speak? She swallowed hard, then spoke the words that changed everything. "Look at his throat." The doctors frowned. One leaned closer, dismissive at first, until he froze. The billionaire's throat carried a swelling, subtle, almost invisible, under the glare of monitors. A tightening, a sign that his airway was being slowly strangled, not by disease, but by an allergic reaction, overlooked amidst their complex theories. A shock rippled through the room. They had searched for grand answers, rare conditions, medical puzzles. Yet the truth was small, simple, devastatingly human. The billionaire was suffocating from something as humble as a reaction to food. The doctors rushed, finally seeing what the housekeeper had seen. Hands moved quickly. Medicine was administered, and air returned to lungs that had nearly surrendered. The billionaire's chest rose, steady this time, his face regaining a trace of color. In the silence that followed, the housekeeper stood still, hands clasped, eyes lowered. She did not seek recognition. She did not smile in triumph. She only carried the quiet dignity of someone who had spoken truth into a storm of arrogance. The billionaire, when he opened his eyes hours later, found her still in the corner. The doctors had scattered, exhausted, some ashamed, some shaken. But she remained steady as stone. Their eyes met, and in his frail whisper he said, "You saved me." She shook her head softly. "I only saw what others did not." Her words carried a power greater than medicine. In that moment, the billionaire realized what wealth had blinded him to, that life is not preserved only by brilliance or money, but often by the unseen, the unheard, the humble eyes that notice what others miss. Later, when news spread of how 20 doctors failed and one housekeeper succeeded, the world reacted with awe. Crowds spoke of her humility, her courage, her silent strength. Some called her a miracle worker, but she rejected the title. Her words became iconic, quoted in homes, schools, and streets. Silence sees what pride overlooks. And again, honor does not wear a uniform. It lives in the heart that notices. The billionaire changed forever, honored her not with riches, but with respect. He created a foundation in her mother's name, ensuring that caregivers and silent workers were trained, supported, and valued. No longer would unseen hands be treated as invisible. The housekeeper returned to her duty, still polishing, still scrubbing, still unseen by many, but to those who knew her story, every step she took echoed like a lesson. The climax of her tale was not the billionaire's survival, but the shift of power. The realization that silent dignity can stand taller than wealth, and truth can rise from the most unexpected voice. As the sun rose over the mansion, casting gold over the polished floors she had once cleaned in shadows, her story remained. A testament that the overlooked often carry the answers, and that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. In the end, she left the world with a reflection that would outlive her. Respect those who walk quietly, for one day their silence may save your life. And now, to those listening, the invitation remains. Where are you watching from? What does this story stir within you? Share your thoughts below, and remember to subscribe for more stories that honor the silent heroes among us.